Hey, folks, welcome back to the Mac and Mike Show. I'm really happy you're here today. Unfortunately, we're back to Zoom, and that lessens, I think, the impact of our sessions because usually when Mike and I get together, we chat for an hour or so before we get started. But today we're going to talk about something that's maybe only interesting to me. I sent a link to Mike whenever I watched this particular YouTube short, and it was a YouTube short from the Glenn Beck show. And maybe some of you people don't like Glenn Beck, and that's okay. It just popped up on my feed, and I watched it, and I was impressed. Now, the funny thing is that Mike and I took different parts of this rather short video to be the most important part of the story of the video. So I don't want to prejudge what Mike wants to say about this, but I'll say this. Glenn Beck used the Donald Trump election, that is his 47, his reelection, and compared it to the Revolutionary War and the Declaration of Independence, where we kind of told King George, hey, King, there's some stuff going on around here that we don't particularly like, and we think it's our duty to institute a new form of government. And I think the parallel that Glenn Beck drew between 1776 and the Declaration of Independence with the Donald Trump MAGA election and what has gone on after the election with many of the appointees that Donald Trump is trying to get across the finish line to be part of his cabinet. A couple of them being somewhat controversial, but people who have done work in certain areas for a very long period of time that Donald Trump wants to get done as well. You know, I think about the, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy Department of Government Efficiency. I look at RFK being in charge of many of the health related issues. Why is autism up? What's going on with our food supply and our pharmaceutical industry? Are we being given stuff that's not been vetted fully or tested fully to be safe for human beings? I look at Kash Patel, who was indicated as being the head of the FBI and the pushback on that particular suggested appointment. I look at Pete Hegseth and the DOD pushback on him. And I think, did I see something recently that Trump said if Hegseth is not approved, that maybe he would put DeSantis in his Department of SecDef? I'm not sure. But anyways, Mike, before I do all my run-on sentences and just dominate the whole thing, the video that I sent to you, what was the most interesting thing to you that you took from it?
Well, about 10 minutes and 15 seconds into the video, Glenn Beck mentions that he had a conversation with Kash Patel, which I later found a snippet of. I don't know if you saw it. I sent it to you by Instagram, which I'm not typically on. But Kash Patel said he has read the JFK documents, and he would be in favor of releasing that particular information, but there's parts of it that he wouldn't release.
You're talking about the JFK assassination.
I wondered how RFK would feel about that. Now, I guess I found a little bit more about this from the Instagram, that Kash says that the things that he wouldn't release are things that are so far afield from the JFK assassination reality that you wouldn't even think to ask the questions. And I wondered if it had to do with methods and procedures, but you would think methods and procedures from the early 1960s really wouldn't be a big thing today.
Sure. So I had done, certainly have new ways of getting things done today.
Yeah, and what I had sent you back in a text is related to where I was in the intelligence community.
Yes.
Which, was a side thing. Only a handful of us were involved. It used to be really deep, dark, secret stuff, but you can read about it now on the web, right, because that mission totally went away. Senior Hunter, Senior Scout, Comfy Levi, those types of missions. So maybe that's what Kash is referring to. I don't want to prejudge, but it really caught my attention. We'll release everything, and these guys are big on releasing information, everything but this. And I just thought, what? I'm curious now, maybe more curious than ever, as to what is this this amount of information. I'm just that kind of person. You know me. I'm curious. Don't
Yes.
tempt me. Don't tempt me with just a little bit of information and not fill in the blanks, because that leads to further speculation
Right.
and possible conspiratorial thinking.
Mike, as I've tagged you often during these podcasts, I look at things from a 30,000 foot view. I'm more interested in much more big picture items, and you're much more granular, and you don't stop at the gravel. I mean, you're dashing all the way down into the grains of sand, and I give you a lot of credit for that. That's not the way I am, and I think because it's not the way I am, I think I appreciate that talent and ability and really character trait in you because I don't have it. It doesn't interest me that much. So, um, and oftentimes we admire traits that we don't possess ourselves. So I do admire that in you, but I gotta imagine that's frustrating sometimes.
I think it frustrates people that know me as well.
Well, the interesting thing to me was that the 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 major part of this YouTube short or reel from the Glenn Beck show was his comparison of what he called the MAGA revolution or the Donald Trump revolution as paralleling the revolution of 1776. And it got my mind to working about, is this true? Is our government doing things that the people don't approve of? And is that what America voted for or against, depending on your point of view, with this recent election? Were they voting for Donald Trump not because of inflation, not because Donald Trump said he'd bring the price of gasoline down at the pump and make things cheaper at the store, but was the American public, did the American public vote for this man, Donald Trump, this MAGA revolution, if you will, because they wanted their government to be brought to heel. They wanted their government, how much of an impact did the forced um, separation, segregation, and the rules and regulations of the COVID year, when rights were violated and liberties were suspended, did that have a major effect on how people voted this time? Because I don't know the answer to that. But I think that's what this video, this Beck video would indicate that, you know, revolutions are not always violent. They're not always bloody. Okay. And his comparison of the revolution of 1776 to the election results of November 2024, it still intrigues me. I mean, I don't have the answer, but I can't discount it out of hand. Perhaps that was, you know, our government has been pushing DEI. Our government has been pushing woke, right? They've been pushing that. They've been pushing toxic masculinity, right? They've been, even the secretary, the previous Milley, who was the head of the Joint Chiefs, what did he say in Congress? I believe there is white rage, and I'm white, and I want to know why that rage exists. I want to know what that rage is all about. Well, listen, I'm white, and I don't feel any rage towards anybody. I served 24 years in the military. I'm not mad at anybody. And look, I get offended when people say, "Man, toxic masculinity." Wait a minute. You know, that toxic masculinity won us several world wars. You know, the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War One, World War Two, Korea, Well, I'm not so sure Vietnam was a win, but that was a political decision, not a military decision. I'm telling you, men are men, and we need men. We need men in our society to be men. So maybe that's what people were voting. You know, that maybe that explains why the huge percentage of men, the plurality of men, voted for Donald Trump in this election.
Yeah, okay, back to the beginning. So I think things in the 17 and early 1800s were far less complex than today. That goes with almost without saying, but people don't stop to think about it. So when we talk about government, government was much smaller then because it had fewer things to deal with. There were fewer things going on in the world.
Yes,
And America had not yet achieved a status of being an independent country. It was just forming.
yes,
So we fast forward to today, and I say there are types of things the government does that the American people don't know about, and probably some don't need to know.
right.
So we have our military secrets, we have our intelligence secrets. Even our police in New York City, bigger cities, have things they need to keep secret, the way they methods and procedures. But
Right.
then there are what Donald Trump talks about, which is the deep state, which Glenn Beck talked about how Fauci's people were shredding information over the COVID-19.
Right.
We go back to Hillary Clinton smashing and destroying and bleach bitting all the internal memos and emails. That kind of thing, makes you go, huh, what were these people up to that they couldn't take care of through normal procedures? We have normal procedures for keeping things classified and how
Yes.
that works. And if you would have ever heard that my intelligence officer at my unit was caught in the skiff smashing phones and doing things of that nature, you'd be going, what the hell? There's a way to clean these things internally
Yep.
and keep the records that are mandated by our government in the first place. So, yeah, I think if we keep, it's hard for people to understand that we classify things easily. We don't do a good job of declassifying them, which I think is a lot of what Trump's talking about. And most of the stuff doesn't need to be classified in the first place. I mean, there's things that were classified, Mac, that I go, what the hell? I saw that on the news yesterday. And you're telling me here the same thing in a briefing, and then I got to keep my mouth shut. Well, maybe I needed to keep my mouth shut because I was not the spokesperson.
Right.
But at the same time, everybody already knew.
But also because your involvement, directly involved, your word may be more credible than some people on the news who are perhaps speculating. I'm reminded, art oftentimes imitates real life. And there was a movie out, Clear and Present Danger. And that Clear and Present Danger movie was one of the Tom Clancy movies that involved Ryan, the CIA analyst turned field agent. And the reason I bring it up is because they were doing a rogue operation in one of the South American nations to eliminate some drug organizations. And the assistant secretary of intelligence had a memo from the director saying, he's being told what to do, and nothing that he's being done is his own fault, but rather my fault. And he goes to the Jack Ryan character. He says, "Do you have one of these get out of jail free cards?" And anyways, but long story short, what Jack Ryan did is he went and saved some people who were at risk in South America, and he's the hero, but he tells the whole story. And I think that's what American people want. Americans understand that America has to do, the government of America, the agencies, the three-letter agencies that are part of the American government, oftentimes need to do some sketchy things in order to keep our nation safe. And I think that generally speaking, the American public wants those three-letter agencies to do those things that do keep America safe. But I also think there's some things that the government of the United States is doing that Americans are not privy to and do not agree with. Case in point, you mentioned the Fauci staff deleting and burning and shredding files of the COVID-19 situation. Um, the laws in America at the time that COVID-19 were that United States of America was not permitted by law. We passed a law. We're not going to do any of this research on United States territory in United States of America. And then further, there was another, decision that said we won't do it. Not only won't we do it here, but we won't pay to have it done elsewhere. Well, I think it's pretty well documented in various places that Fauci gave money to the Chinese scientists who were working on COVID 19 in Wuhan, where the virus originated from, that it's entirely possible, even probable, maybe even certain, that United States research money, research funds were spent for that COVID 19 research that eventually caused the pandemic that we all were locked down in our homes for a year. Now, I don't know for certain whether Fauci and other people in our government did that, but I think the American people have a right to know if we did that. And I think that if we did that, violating the law, that there should be certain repercussions for that act, for those activities and that action, because those people would have done it knowing that it was against the law. Now, we recently saw where President Biden pardoned Hunter Biden, blanket pardon for 10-year period of time for anything he may or may not have done, even getting, jaywalking ticket. You can't, anything from 2014 to today, you can't charge him with a crime. And perhaps Biden would do the same thing for Fauci or anybody else who was involved in the COVID 19 thing. But I think I'm speaking from my own heart, and I can't obviously suggest that I'm know what all Americans want to know. But generally speaking, I want to know if the law was violated and people did bad things in my name. I also generally want to know that whoever is responsible is going to be held accountable. And generally speaking, I want, nothing disinfects bad things like the light of day. You expose it to bright light. It's like turning on the light where there's a room full of cockroaches. They all scurry for cover. And I think, generally speaking, I think most Americans want that kind of transparency, that kind of light to be brought on many of the things that have been done by our government over the past whatever number of years in our name. And I think Americans generally want to be on the right side of truth and the right side of righteousness. I don't think we want to be responsible for creating a virus that kills thousands of people. I don't think Americans want that, regardless of whether or not somebody else is doing that and attempting to threaten us with it. Now, do they want us to maybe do the research to defend ourselves? Sure. But do we want to do the research so that we can use that as a weapon? I don't think people want to do that. What do you think, Mike?
Well, of course, you got to look at it. I'm pretty sure Fauci at least funneled this money through that one friend of his, because it couldn't be done directly. Even it was Obama that said we couldn't, don't do this here.
Right.
No, he just said don't do it. America can't do it. So you remember being in the military when your boss said don't do something and you really wanted to do it. There are certain ways we used to get around it, and we tried to keep it, off the radar. And you always did a risk assessment. I imagine that's what Fauci was doing. Now, I'm presupposing, and I think that there's a 99% chance that he was behind the funneling of the money. But he had to have known what it was for. And he did some kind of risk assessment, thinking, well, if something happens in China at Wuhan, it's not going to affect us here. So it may have been, like a mistake. But you're right. It was a bad thing to do. He did it. There needs to be accountability. I don't know what the reason behind that gain of research function testing was. I mean, I don't know enough about the science to know how
Right.
to evaluate how important is it that we run the risk of what happened versus this thing occurring naturally or as a weapon and not having a way to combat it. And if it was going to be used as a weapon, why the hell would we do it in China? I mean, my God, that just kind of blows my mind. There was also those, I don't think they're rumors. We had labs running in the Ukraine. That came out too. So what the hell are we doing with labs in Ukraine?
Mike, if it was righteous to do the research, then there should have been transparency. and a group of people at the appropriate level in government making the decision to move ahead with it, and in fact endorsing it, and it should have been not necessarily made public, but if Fauci and other people in that group are destroying evidence, there's an indication to me that something inappropriate was happening. You don't destroy evidence that defends or protects you. You destroy evidence that incriminates you.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier about even what Hillary Clinton did. Anytime you're destroying evidence, something is afoot. Now, of course, we did our share of shredding in the military and the intelligence side.
Sure.
And, it's more than just shredding. I remember the shredding machine we had. I forget how much it cost. It was tens of thousands, and it would pulverize the paper and then add ink to it. So even if you could get the pulverized pieces back together, it was all inked up. Right. But that was the 1990s. So today, there's so much more electronic that goes on, and it is really, really difficult to erase that electronic footprint.
Right.
And unless that's why Hillary Clinton did the whole bleach bit thing.
Right.
Trying to completely obliterate the electronic footprint. I don't know if Fauci's team got to that point.
But even so, Mike, in the government, everything is duplicated and backed up, and copies are kept on offsite locations. So there's usually some way of being able to reconstruct it if you really want to. But the other issue that he brought up was all the millions and billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine. And what oversight is there of those $1 billion that is being sent to Ukraine? Basically, what Mr. Beck indicated in his opinion was that the money being sent to Ukraine was really nothing more than a money laundering operation that put money into certain people's pockets. Now, that's, someone can hold that opinion, but if there's no proof to that, then obviously it's a spurious kind of, if it's a claim without proof, it's just a claim. But is there proof? Can we find proof? And if there isn't any proof, let me ask, why isn't there an appropriate accounting of literally billions of dollars that are being sent to the nation of Ukraine? When the war in Ukraine started, Mike, you and I talked about it, and we even talked about it here on our podcast. And what I said very forcefully was, there are no good guys in this war. The government of Ukraine is corrupt, and the government of Russia is corrupt. Why are we getting involved with two corrupt? Why are we picking sides with two corrupt governments? And I know what the media said, and the Ukrainians, they were invaded, and the Ukrainians are good people. Yeah, I don't doubt that the Ukrainian people are good people. I don't doubt that the Russian people are good people, but both governments are corrupt. And how much of the Burisma Hunter Biden story do we need to delve into to understand that Ukraine is a corrupt government?
Yeah, that was recently brought up again with the pardon. I don't know that we want to get sidetracked onto that, but
no, I don't think we do.
But no, you're right. No, I didn't mean sidetrack completely, but where I was going to go was going to take it in a sidetrack direction, not you.
Okay.
So
it all gets back to the transparency issue, right? Is this election a reflection of the opinion of the electorate of the United States of America that we're unhappy with the way our government is behaving, the way our government is acting, and we want some new rules of the road? Hey, King George, you can't tax us without representation. Hey, King George, you can't quarter troops in our homes without our permission or without some sort of compensation. And these are the kinds of things that the Americans were rebelling against that are going on in our nation in the colonies of 1776 that now are in a similar way, not an actual exact way, but I mean, we're not throwing tea into the harbor, right? We're not doing that. But what we are saying is, hey, we don't want Fauci creating COVID-19 in China. We don't want that, And I say that more as a rhetorical question than a statement of fact. What I'm asking is, was Glenn Beck correct that this election of Donald Trump was another form of revolution, not bloody revolution with guns and and fighting in the streets, but a non-violent. Because look, MAGA is non-violent. Even those people are put away in prison for the January 6th, strolling around the Capitol. Very, very few of those people were violent people, right? I mean, you
Right.
saw the video. I saw the video. They weren't out there beating up police. The only person who died on January 6th was an Air Force veteran who did not have a weapon, who was shot. Ashley Babbitt was shot in the neck by a police officer in the Capitol when she was virtually no threat to anyone. And so, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say without getting all agitated and excited is the MAGA movement is not a violent or not any kind of movement that's looking for a violent revolution. But maybe, just maybe, this election of 2024, of November 2024, really was a reflection of the same sentiment of 1776. Hey, King George, hey, United States government, you're doing shit in our name that we don't want you to do, you know?
Yeah. Back to what you started with, I had a question that just popped into my head as you were speaking, and I'll have to look at it. The complaint typically is that these representatives, because we have a representative Republican DC, are actually working for us,
Yes,
but yet they're treated as though they are mini rulers.
yes,
And it even comes to when you've had to address congressmen and senators. You know, there's a title, honorable.
yes,
Honorable that you're bestowing on these people who work for you, who are in essence, if you've ever been a boss or a business owner, you don't address your employees like, Honorable Matt, please unload that truck faster.
right.
No, it's, hey, what the hell are you doing? And I think that some of this has affected the attitude the average American has towards his representatives. No, it's true. You're supposed to work for us. No, we shouldn't be disrespectful, but we shouldn't give you too much respect either. And you talk about revolution. Well, I mean, that's what elections are. They're bloodless revolutions every 2 years of your congressman, every 6 years of your senator, every 4 years for president. And I
Well,
think that's how our forefathers set it up in a very wise way.
sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just people follow their incumbent's lead. But Mike, I don't want to make light of this, but there's a website out there that says, invest with Nancy Pelosi, right?
Oh,
And what it is you get your investment advice from Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio, because supposedly she's trading stocks, buying and selling stocks on insider information based on briefings that she gets that are top secret or secret in nature, that the average person doesn't have the information for. Now, I know it's a funny kind of haha joke. We mean this being somewhat facetious, but guess what? There's a kernel of truth in that. How does Nancy Pelosi become a multimillionaire based on her salary as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives? You're not supposed to get rich. Remember, Thomas Jefferson famously said when he left office, he said, I leave with my pockets empty. I leave with less wealth than I became president. And isn't that what the term public service really means? You're supposed to go, and not that it's supposed to cost you money, but it can cost you money if you do things the right way. And should the American public have to put up with individuals who take secret private information and investing in based on that information become multimillionaires? Is that what we want our government employees, our government service to represent? Because I think, again, that's another thing that the average American rails against. They don't want to see that.
yeah, I think you're 100% right. Besides Thomas Jefferson, I don't know of another president that left office with less money in his pocket other than Donald J. Trump.
he didn't take a salary. Not
Well,
one
not
single
only did
dollar.
he take a salary, he lost money.
Yes.
I mean, I forget if it was Bloomberg or who did. They did the search. Now he made a lot of that back with Truth Social, but that's
Yes.
still waiting to be seen how much the value of that's going to be. So anyway, that's it's true. I mean, now I have to step back because I know Congressman Dan Newsom,
Uh-huh.
and you know him too, I think.
Yeah.
And Dan is a really good guy. Now he entered into politics as a man coming from family wealth.
Yes.
So if he has more money because of his investments with his family's business, which he's not participating with, but he's still part of the family, and I'm sure he's got either stock options or something, he may come out of Congress someday much wealthier than he went in.
Yeah, but
But
that's
that's
not what I'm
because of
talking about.
pre-existing conditions,
Yeah.
not
That's
because
not
he did anything nefarious. Because Dan is one of the straightest shooters I think I've ever met in my life.
the point I'm trying to make, Mike, is that when you use secret information, it comes from congressional briefings, and it gives you an idea of where the market's going, and you're able to use that information to buy and sell stocks, either because you have positive news or negative news soon to come out. Then I think you're cheating other people. You're using information that belongs to America to ingratiate yourself or to compensate yourself in a way that's not appropriate. You never use your position of responsibility, power, and authority for your own benefit. That's not what public service is for. And I think again, that's one of the areas of transparency that the electorate is upset about. I mean, there's a reason why Hunter Biden was given a 10-year pardon for any and all activities that he was participated in. If you listen to some of the pundits and you look at some of the information that was on the Hunter Biden laptop, then and you believe that that's true, it's not Russian disinformation, as 50 different um, people said in the intel departments said, then you can see how Hunter Biden used his position of not his but his father's position of authority to create wealth for he and his uncle and his aunt and his other siblings and the entire Biden family. Now, I don't think America nor its citizens want public servants to be able to use that kind of position. What did they, there were LLCs, limited liability corporations, that were established in several of Joe Biden's grandchildren, underage grandchildren, name, and there was considerable amount of money deposited into those accounts. Now, you and I both know, Mike, that nobody gives you something for nothing. They don't give you money if they're not getting something in return. And it's not we know the money was there, but we're not at all certain what they got in return. And with this pardon, there will be no accounting for how, what, when, where, and why that whole story came together and becomes a package. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that the average American who doesn't have those keys to the golden kingdom, who can get China to write them big fat $1 million checks, the average American doesn't want our public services, those persons in position of power and authority, to be able to compensate themselves by using that position of power and authority. Now, maybe we'll never, with this pardon, maybe we'll never know. But is that what the electorate was voting for when they voted not only the Electoral College majority, but also the raw popular vote to Donald Trump, who promised to, bring the light of day to disinfect all these things? And hey, look, if Kash Patel says there are some things about the JFK file I don't think we should release, that's okay. Let's release the rest of it. And if there are things that Fauci did that were inappropriate against the law, I'm not so concerned about whether or not he gets arrested and adjudicated and penalized. What I am interested in is what happened, why did it happen, and how can we prevent it from happening in the future?
Yeah, I don't know what the answers are. By
And
the way,
maybe, but again, Mike, is that what the American public was voting for? Because I
well,
think it is.
yeah, partly. I mean, we were voting on economy, we were voting on the border, but that all boils down to accountability. I think to the people. Um, the, we don't have the time. We're not economists.
No,
We don't sit here and even you and I, who have more time than the average person, don't have the time to get into the granular details. I mean, we watch the news, you can YouTube and learn things today, but we know historically basically what has worked and what hasn't. And I think the American people, for example, I'll go to the border because I think the border was easier for people to understand than the nuances of the economy.
yes,
We know and knew from the very beginning that Joe Biden had just torn up everything Trump did
yep,
that had things under control. And I don't, I think the American people, it's not just me, people I talked to that were even sort of liberal,
yep,
never understood why he undid these things. It just seemed ludicrous. Like, if it isn't broke, don't fix it, is the old saying. But if you break it intentionally, like a toddler, I think that's how, I mean, sure, people would complain about Trump and his personality. But if you looked at the way Joe Biden and that administration, because nobody really thinks he was in charge, it's almost like they broke things on purpose, like toddlers, just because Trump did it.
yeah,
The only thing that's kind of different that was I found extremely interesting is when the vaccine came out for the COVID-19,
yes,
it was the Democrats that were all for taking it, and it was a
yep,
Trump initiative.
all right,
And it was a majority of the MAGA Republicans that said, hey, this happened too fast. We're not sure exactly what
yep,
happened.
yep,
Should we be taking it? I admit I took my two first shots, never took another one. I think, the science just isn't quite there yet. But it's typical that we want to go counter to what the opposite side does. But at the same time, if we go counter to it, we should have a good reason for it.
yeah,
And we should think it through. And what are the unintended consequences if we reverse the decisions of previous administrations? Like, why didn't Biden get rid of the tariffs on China? And they come
yeah,
out, they speak so heavily against tariffs.
yep,
It just made no sense. And that's what was brought up time and time. Well, you could have taken the tariffs off China if you think they're such a bad thing.
absolutely, yeah.
So we're
Mike,
down to about 2 minutes, some
I,
odd
I,
seconds.
I see that. I don't want to discount the fact that people were voting on their pocketbook. People were voting on the economy. They were voting on the crime in the streets that they saw as a result of this unregulated, unfettered, illegal immigration. But I do think the question that Glenn Beck poses is this: are we unhappy with the things that the government are doing that we know is wrong? And I think that that question bears review and consideration. And after my initial consideration, I believe, in fact, it was part of what America was voting for. And I think the toxic masculinity and the war on women and all that stuff, transgenders in the military, the no standards in the military having trouble filling their ranks with recruiting quotas because of that. I think all of those things combined were part of the reason why Donald Trump not only won the Electoral College vote, but also won the popular vote. And with that, I'm with you, sir. We're down to the last couple of minutes. We should wrap this up. Last thoughts?
I have no other last thoughts.
My last thought, Mike, is I think you're a handsome man, and I'm not gay.
Ah,
Mac and Mike
out.
out.